camera deep under this oil rig, and they spotted this thing with these insane long appendages.
The ocean is never silent. Even at its deepest, there's always something. Shrimp clicking, currents grinding against steel, distant vibrations humming through the water. So when a diver reported total silence beneath an offshore oil rig, engineers didn't panic. They assumed faulty equipment, stress, maybe exhaustion. What they didn't understand was that silence wasn't a malfunction. It was a warning. At exactly 2 p.m., veteran diver Robert Kensington entered the water for what should have been a routine inspection. 45 minutes later, he came back up a different person, shaking, pale, barely able to speak. He quit on the spot. No explanation, no negotiation, just one sentence that froze the entire crew. Something down there was waiting until I was alone. The fish were gone, the water was empty, and from the darkness below, a light appeared. One that didn't just see him, but recognized him. What Robert encountered beneath that rig doesn't fit biology, physics, or anything we're prepared to deal with. And the most disturbing part isn't what he saw, it's what happened to the divers who never came back. Robert Kensington wasn't the kind of diver who panicked. On the Poseidon rig, he was known as the Ghost, not because he was strange, but because he was calm, to the point of being unsettling. When alarms went off, when cables snapped, or visibility dropped to nothing, Robert didn't rush or raise his voice. He moved with quiet precision, like he'd already accepted whatever the ocean might throw at him. In the past year alone, he had pulled 3 men out of situations that should have ended in body bags. No hesitation, no drama, just results. That's why no one was prepared for what walked into Captain Reeves' office that afternoon. Water dripped from Robert's wetsuit, pooling onto the gray industrial carpet as his chest heaved like he'd sprinted the length of the rig. His hands were shaking, not the jittery nerves of someone startled, but the deep tremor of a man whose sense of reality had been cracked open. He didn't sit down. He didn't explain. He slammed a single sheet of paper onto the desk. His resignation effective immediately. Reeves had seen divers break before. The isolation, the pressure, the endless horizon of water. It gets inside people's heads. Usually it happens after a close call, a blown valve, a shark encounter, something you can point to and explain. But Robert hadn't had an accident. No alarms, no equipment failure, nothing on the surface suggested anything went wrong at all. Reeves assumed it was nitrogen narcosis, the martini effect. Go deep enough, long enough, and your brain starts lying to you. You feel watched. You see things. You panic over nothing. It happens even to experienced divers. Reeves tried to calm him down, offered a chair, told him they'd review the dive logs together, but Robert refused. His voice was steady now, too steady. He said his gas mix was perfect. He said he checked his gauges 5 times. Depth was controlled, time was within limits, his mind was clear. And that was the problem, because if his mind was clear, then whatever happened down there wasn't in his head. Reeves noticed something else then, something that bothered him more than the shaking. Robert never once asked if he was safe, never asked if anyone else had seen it. He only kept repeating the same thing over and over under his breath. It knew I was alone. And that was when Reeves realized this wasn't about fear of the ocean. It was fear of something inside it. The dive wasn't supposed to be memorable. It was a standard inspection at Sector 7, a junction where several pipelines converged beneath the rig. The kind of job divers finish without thinking twice. Normally it required 2 men, company policy, safety regulations, the usual paperwork. But that morning, Robert's regular partner, Johnson, called in sick. Severe stomach issues, or so the message said. Corporate wasn't happy. Pressure readings along the line had been fluctuating, and any delay meant fines, inspections, and unwanted attention. So the call was made. Robert would go alone. A standby diver was suited up on deck. Surface support had eyes on his umbilical and hardline comms the entire time. On paper, it was safe enough, and if anyone could handle a solo descent, it was Robert. In fact, he preferred it. No chatter in his ear, no worrying about someone else's mistakes, just him, the water, and the work. He entered the ocean at exactly 2 p.m. Conditions were almost perfect. Visibility stretched close to 60 feet. Rare for that stretch of water. Sunlight poured down in long, pale beams, cutting through the blue like light through stained glass. Schools of amberjacks circled the rig's legs. Groupers hovered near the steel, unbothered by his presence. It was the kind of dive that lulled you into forgetting where you were. Robert reached the junction right on schedule. Valves checked, no corrosion, no leaks. He noted everything on his slate, calculating his bottom time as he went. 45 minutes total, followed by routine decompression in the chamber back on deck. Easy money. Boring even. And that's what bothered him later the most. Nothing felt wrong at first. No alarms, no equipment glitches, no sudden drop in temperature or visibility. The ocean didn't grow dark or violent. It stayed calm. Almost too calm. 20 minutes into the inspection, as Robert tightened the last bolt on the flange, the world around him changed. Not gradually, not subtly. It stopped. The fish vanished. Every last one of them. Gone in an instant. The amberjacks, the groupers, even the tiny reef fish that never stray far from cover. And with them went the sound. The constant background noise divers learned to tune out. The clicks, the distant vibrations, the movement of water itself. The ocean went went silent. And in that silence, Robert felt something shift, like he had crossed an invisible line he was never meant to see. Silence underwater isn't peaceful. It's wrong. The ocean is a living system, and when it suddenly goes quiet, it means one thing to anyone who spent enough time below the surface. Something higher on the food chain has entered the area. A shark, a pod of orcas, a presence big enough to make everything else disappear. Robert felt the instinctive jolt of fear immediately. His body reacted before his mind could catch up, heart rate climbing, muscles tightening, every nerve screaming at him to turn and ascend. But training is a powerful thing. He forced himself to slow his breathing, to think logically. Currents shift, fish scatter, sound behaves strangely at depth. Panic gets people killed faster than any predator ever could. So he stayed. He turned his back to the open water and focused on the work, telling himself that fear was just another environmental hazard to manage. But the feeling didn't fade. It grew heavier, pressing in on him from all sides. It felt like exposure, the kind you feel standing alone in an open field at night, aware that you're visible from every direction. Then came the sensation he couldn't explain. A prickle crept up the back of his neck, sharp and electric. The unmistakable feeling of being watched, not glanced at, not noticed, studied, as if something had fixed its full attention on him and was taking its time. Robert spun around, sweeping his dive light in a wide arc through the blue-black water. The beam cut through drifting particles and empty space, revealing nothing. No movement, no shadow, no massive shape sliding just beyond visibility. The ocean looked exactly the same as it had minutes earlier. Open, empty, indifferent. But the pressure inside his chest tightened. His wrist monitor began to chirp softly, alerting him to his rising heart rate. He was burning through air faster than he should have been. He adjusted his breathing again, slower this time, trying to bring his body back under control. Still, the sensation lingered, as if 1,000 unseen eyes were fixed on his back. That was when Robert made the decision to abort the dive. He reached for the comm switch, ready to tell surface support he was heading up. He pressed the button, expecting the familiar crackle of voices from above. Instead, he heard nothing. No static, no distortion, just dead air. Thick, absolute, and final. It was as if the ocean had sealed him inside a bubble, cutting him off from the world above. And somewhere below him, in the direction he hadn't dared to look yet, something began to glow. The light didn't descend from above. It rose from below. At first, it was faint, barely more than a smudge in the darkness beneath the pipeline, deep in the trench that ran under the rig. A soft blue-green pulse, slow and deliberate, like a heartbeat. It wasn't the chaotic shimmer of bioluminescent plankton or the brief flash of a jellyfish. This glow was steady, controlled, intentional. Robert froze. Years of diving had taught him what belonged in the ocean and what didn't. This didn't match anything. As the light brightened, he realized it was moving upward far too fast. At that depth, anything that large should have displaced water, kicked up silt, created turbulence. This didn't. It simply appeared closer with each pulse, occupying new space without passing through the space in between. His instincts screamed at him to flee. He slammed his hand onto his buoyancy compensator, inflating his vest just enough to start a controlled ascent. Shooting upward wasn't an option. At 180 feet, a panic rise would turn his blood into foam. Decompression sickness would finish him long before the surface ever did. So he was trapped, forced to rise slowly while whatever was below him closed the distance with impossible ease. As the glow reached the edge of his light beam, the final shape emerged. It was massive, easily 20 feet across, and it didn't have a single stable form. Its body looked like a collection of shifting planes and sharp angles, folding and unfolding in on themselves like a living puzzle. Parts of it seemed solid, others translucent, as if reality itself hadn't decided what it was allowed to be. Long appendages extended and retracted, not swimming, not pushing water, but repositioning themselves as though the rules of movement didn't apply. Robert tried to make sense of it, and his mind failed. The thing stopped 30 feet beneath him and just waited, suspended in the water column, unmoving, unaffected by current or gravity. The pulsing light washed over Robert's suit, his hands, his chest, bathing him in that unnatural glow. And then he saw what passed for its face. There were no eyes, no mouth, no features that made sense in any biological way, just a smooth, reflective surface that seemed to absorb the surrounding darkness. And when Robert looked into it, the fear changed. It wasn't the fear of being hunted, it was the fear of being recognized, because in that moment, he understood something with horrifying clarity. This wasn't a chance encounter. Whatever was beneath him knew exactly who he was, and it had decided to stop and look. The contact didn't come as a voice. There were no words echoing in Robert's head, no sound at all. Instead, the images hit him all at once, violent, intrusive flashes that burned behind his eyes. His thoughts weren't interrupted, they were overwritten. He saw the pipeline beneath him, not from his own angle, but from below, as if he were standing on the ocean floor and looking up. He saw the rig's massive legs stretching toward the surface, then the support vessel, then the deck itself, and then then faces. Captain Reeves, Garcia, Johnson, Peters. Each image came with impossible clarity, as if they were memories he'd lived, not scenes being shown to him. Worse, the perspective never changed. Every face was seen from underneath, distorted by water and distance. The realization landed hard and cold. This thing hadn't just noticed the rig today. It had been watching, studying the routines, learning the people for weeks. Robert felt his body drift slightly downward before he caught himself. His hands clenched the ascent line as his decompression alarm chimed softly, demanding he hold position. Part of him wanted to obey the rules. Another part, older, deeper, and far more dangerous, wanted to let go. The pull wasn't physical. Nothing grabbed him. Nothing chased him. It was an invitation, a pressure inside his mind, gentle but relentless, nudging him toward the light below. His vision blurred at the edges as the glow shimmered, shifting colors like oil on water. The shape beneath him mirrored his movements, rising when he rose, stopping when he stopped, waiting. More images flooded in. Robert saw himself from outside his own body, floating in the dark. He saw his reflection warped across that smooth, faceless surface. The message was unmistakable. He wasn't being threatened. He was being claimed. "These are my waters," the sensation seemed to say. Not in language, but in certainty. "You don't belong above anymore." Robert locked both arms around the line, fingers cramping as the minutes crawled by. Every second of decompression felt endless. The creature stayed with him through each stop, patient, unhurried, glowing softly in the deep like it had all the time in the world, because it did. And as Robert fought the urge to descend, one terrifying thought settled into his mind. If it could reach him like this, without touch, without sound, then it could reach anyone on that rig, even the ones who never went into the water. When Robert finally surfaced, he didn't celebrate. He didn't even look relieved. He hauled himself onto the deck like a man escaping a burning building, ripping his helmet free and sucking in the thick, oily air as if it might vanish. Only when his boots hit solid steel did he believe, barely, that he was still alive. That's when the questions started. Back in Captain Reeves' office, the story poured out in fragments. The silence, the light, the thing that waited. Reeves listened with folded arms, forcing himself to stay grounded. Divers hallucinate. Fear does strange things at depth. There had to be an explanation. But then Robert asked a question that shifted the room. Why did Johnson really call in sick? Reeves hesitated. He realized he hadn't actually seen Johnson all day. The message had been passed through Garcia, the comms officer. Johnson said he was throwing up, said he'd stay in his bunk. No one questioned it. No one checked. "Call him," Robert said. His voice was calm now, but his eyes weren't. "Ask him if he's been having dreams. Ask him if he's felt watched." The phone rang and rang. No answer. Reeves radioed Garcia and ordered him to go to Johnson's quarters. Knock, break the door down if he had to. The minutes stretched in, the silence in the office pressing down just like it had in the trench. Then the radio crackled. "The room's empty," Garcia said, his voice smaller than it should have been. "Bed hasn't been used, and his gear's gone." That was the moment disbelief died. People don't take dive gear when they're sick. They don't vanish from an offshore rig without a boat, and they don't do it quietly. But Johnson was gone, and no alarms had sounded. No one had seen him leave. Robert swallowed hard and said something that made Reeves' stomach drop. "I saw him last night, around 9. He was heading toward the equipment bay. I asked if he was okay. He didn't answer. He just stared straight through me." The implications settled like poison. Johnson hadn't been sick. He'd been called. Reeves started flipping through reports, trying to anchor himself in paperwork. And that's when another name surfaced. Peters. Another diver. Another disappearance. 3 days earlier. Officially, Peters had taken emergency leave. Family issue. Supply boat transfer logged and approved. Clean and simple. Except Reeves couldn't remember seeing him board that boat. They made the call to the mainland. 10 minutes later, the response came back. There was no record of Peters arriving. The supply boat captain swore Peters never boarded. His room was empty. His gear was missing. They weren't quitting. They weren't leaving. They were going into the water. The pattern was undeniable now. Whatever was beneath the rig wasn't reacting to them. It was selecting them. And Robert realized something that made his hands shake all over again. He hadn't been spared because he wasn't chosen. He'd been spared because he resisted, and not everyone would. The realization hit Robert all at once. This wasn't over. Whatever lived beneath the rig wasn't finished collecting. It had shown him the crew for a reason, not as a threat, but as a promise. "You have to evacuate," Robert said flatly. There was no panic in his voice now, just certainty. "It's not done. It showed me all of you. It showed me you, Captain." Reeves didn't argue. He couldn't. The disappearances, the missing gear, the lies that only existed on paper, none of it fit coincidence anymore. He ordered a supply chopper for first light and began clearing non-essential personnel. But even as the rig moved into emergency protocol, the ocean outside remained calm. Too calm. As dusk settled in, the rig's floodlights flickered on, carving a circle of artificial brightness into the black water below. Most of the crew avoided looking over the rail. Robert didn't, and that was his mistake. Through the metal grating of the walkway, far beneath the surface, he saw it again. A faint, rhythmic pulse, blue-green, slow, steady, no longer buried in the trench. It was higher now, closer. It was rising. The thing wasn't fleeing the rig. It wasn't hiding from them. It was learning how far up it could come, testing the boundary between their world and its own. Robert backed away from the railing, his heart hammered. He understood then why it had let him live. He wasn't a survivor, he was a witness. At dawn, as the helicopter blades cut through the morning air, Robert didn't say goodbye. He didn't grab clothes or mementos, just his wallet and his passport. The farther inland he could get, the better. Desert, mountains, anywhere the water couldn't follow. As the chopper lifted off, the rig shrank beneath him, a fragile island of steel surrounded by endless dark. From above, the ocean looked peaceful again, beautiful, untouched. But Robert knew better. Whatever was down there wasn't confined to the trench anymore. It was moving, and it wasn't finished with him yet. Robert Kensington never went back to the ocean. He settled in a small town in Nevada, as far from salt water as he could physically get. No lakes, no rivers, no boats. He took a job in construction under an open sky, surrounded by dust and rock, telling himself that if he stayed on dry land long enough, the feeling would fade. It didn't. At night, the dreams returned. In them, the walls of his bedroom dissolved, replaced by endless water. The pressure built slowly, crushing his chest as that familiar blue-green light bloomed in the corner of the room. The shape unfolded itself, angles shifting, limbs forming where limbs shouldn't exist. It never spoke, didn't need to. The images came the same way they always had. Johnson, Peters. They were still down there. Not dead, not drowning, changed. Their bodies twisted into unfamiliar geometry, floating beside the thing that had taken them, watching, waiting, part of something larger now. Months after Robert left, the Poseidon rig logged 3 more accidental drownings, slips, equipment failures, human error. The company sealed Sector 7 for maintenance and quietly paid out settlements. No investigations, no headlines, just paperwork. But Robert knows the truth. The pipeline was fine. The equipment worked. The ocean wasn't broken. It was occupied. We like to believe the sea is empty, that it's just water and animals and darkness, a place to drill, to fish, to dump, to ignore. But what Robert encounters suggests something else entirely. An intelligence older than us, patient enough to wait, smart enough to study, and powerful enough to reach into the human mind before ever touching the body. The most terrifying part isn't that something lives beneath the surface. It's that it's been there the whole time, watching, learning. And now, for reasons we don't understand, it's starting to rise. The question isn't why it let Robert go. The question is whether it ever really did. Because when the ocean goes silent, it's already too late. The ocean looks harmless when it's calm, a flat mirror reflecting the sky, stretching out so far it feels empty. That illusion is what keeps us comfortable. It lets us believe the deep is just another environment we've mapped, measured, and mastered. But Robert's story tears that comfort apart. What he encountered wasn't an animal acting on instinct. It didn't attack. It didn't chase. It waited. It learned routines, isolated individuals, and applied pressure where the human mind is weakest, through dreams, through curiosity, through that quiet pull that feels like your own thought instead of something born. That isn't predation. That's strategy. If something like that exists beneath our oceans, then the missing divers weren't accidents. They were the early stages of contact, test cases. And the reason we're only hearing stories like this now may have nothing to do with discovery and everything to do with timing. Oil rigs pushed deeper than ever before. Submersibles reached trenches we once thought unreachable. Noise, drilling, and extraction cut into places that may have stayed undisturbed for millions of years. Maybe the silence Robert experienced wasn't just the absence of light. Maybe it was territory being cleared. Robert lives with the certainty that whatever marked him still knows where he is. He feels it when storms roll in, when the air pressure drops, when rain hits the ground and the world smells like water. The pull never stops. It just waits. So the next time you stand near the ocean and feel that sudden prickle at the back of your neck, don't brush it off. Don't look for movement. Don't search the surface for answers, because whatever is down there doesn't need to be seen to find you. And if these intelligences have been watching us for centuries, studying our habits, learning our weaknesses, then one question matters more than any other. Why are they surfacing now? Is this just a warning or the beginning of something that can't be pushed back into the deep? If you heard that call from below, do you think you'd be strong enough to resist it? Let me know what you think. Robert Kensington didn't lose his mind beneath the Poseidon rig. He lost his certainty. The certainty that humans understand the ocean. The certainty that we're alone down there. The certainty that whatever lives in the deep is either mindless or afraid of us. What he encountered wasn't chaos. It was order, patience, intelligence that didn't rush, didn't reveal itself all at once, and didn't need violence to win. It simply waited until the moment was right, until someone was isolated, distracted, and vulnerable. And then it reached out, not with claws or teeth, but with influence. That's the part that should unsettle you. Because if something can touch the human mind before it ever touches the body, distance doesn't protect you. Depth doesn't protect you. Dry land doesn't protect you. The ocean doesn't have to come for you physically if it can plant the idea first and let curiosity do the rest. We drill deeper every year. We push into darker water. We assume silence means emptiness. But Robert's story suggests the opposite. Silence might mean something has noticed us, something intelligent enough to clear space, to observe, and to decide when interaction begins. So the next time you look out at the sea and see that calm, reflective surface, remember what it hides. Remember the sudden quiet. Remember the light that waits below. And remember that not every warning comes as a roar. Some arrive as an invitation. If you enjoyed this story and want more deep-sea mysteries, hidden encounters, and unexplained intelligence lurking just beyond human reach, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. Because the ocean hasn't revealed everything it knows yet, and something tells me it's only just getting started.